Kinoko is a very powerful tool for managing all aspects of the mushroom cultivation process, and like many tools, this power comes with a bit of a learning curve. My name is John, I'm one of the developers on the Kinoko team, and today I'm going to be walking you through our quick start guide. By the end of this video, you'll have all the knowledge you need to start harnessing the features of Kinoko to track and manage your data more efficiently. If you'd like to follow along, you can find the Quick Start Guide at our documentation site. That's at docs.kinoko-app.com. I'll drop that link in the description below. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume you've already gone to our website and created an account. If you haven't done that yet, go ahead and visit our main website, that's kinoko-app.com, and get your account set up. First things first, it's important to understand that Kinoko has two different components. There's the main web interface, which is where you'll manage your account, create your farms and locations, print all your QR code labels, generate reports, and pretty much everything else. The other component is our mobile app. The mobile app is very small, simple, and streamlined. It's just focused on tracking data by scanning QR codes. All of our other features live on the main website and are accessed through your browser. Using the mobile app is completely optional. You can input all your data through the web interface without ever having to print or scan QR code labels, but we do highly recommend using the mobile app scanning and QR code workflow for most customers. It makes it much easier to handle high volume quickly and efficiently, and is really the best way to get the most out of Kinoko's features. For this video, I'm only going to be talking about the mobile app workflow. If you're interested in using the website for data collection instead, you can read all about that on the docs site that I mentioned earlier. I've already created a new account just for this video, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. And when you first log in, this is the screen you'll be greeted with. This is the main dashboard for Kinoko. There are links here to various other places on the dashboard. Down here, you'll have an overview of the usage on your subscription. Over here is the navigation sidebar. These links will take you to all the different screens in the dashboard. And then this is your farm navigation dashbar. So right now I just have this one farm, Quick Start Farm A, but depending on your subscription level, you could add as many farms as you need. One common source of confusion with Kinoko is this concept of a farm. In building Kinoko, we wanted to make sure we were meeting the needs of operations of all sizes and all scales, from individual home growers all the way up to larger commercial operations with multiple farms. So for example, let's say I'm a commercial mushroom grower and I have two farms. I have one up in Buffalo and one down in Charleston. I can add multiple different farms to my account so I can manage all of them from one place without having to have multiple accounts where I would need to log out and log back in. Sometimes on our documentation site, you might see the terminology of a main farm and sub farms. Your main farm just refers to your account, and the sub farms are just the individual farms that you've created within your account. When you first register an account, your first farm will be created for you automatically. For most users, this one farm is probably all you're ever going to need. As you can see here, I have my automatically created farm listed on the sidebar, and if I wanted to create a new farm, I can click this plus button. This will open up a side panel where I can give the farm a name and set up all the different locations. But for now, I'm just going to close that out and I'm going to work with the one farm that I already have. The first thing we're going to want to do is create locations for the farm. And most importantly, we want to set up our rooms. In Kinoko, every farm should have at least one room for each step of the mushroom cultivation process. That's pasteurization, inoculation, colonization, fruiting, and storage. This is crucial for tracking our data. We need these rooms defined so that we can move blocks around from room to room and track where they are in the process. I'm going to go ahead and select my farm from this sidebar here, and this will change the view here on the right side to a specific dashboard for this farm. And each of these tabs will correspond to the different steps in the process and show me kind of a quick view of information about the blocks I have in each of these process steps. So next thing we want to do is click here to add locations to this farm. This will bring up the farm edit side panel. I can also get there by clicking this menu here and editing from here. So here we can edit the name of the farm, which I'll go ahead and just call it Quick Start Farm. And then down here is where we can add rooms and locations. So we're going to go ahead and click this Add Room button. And I'll just go ahead and add one for each. So if I click Save Changes here, now we have all of our rooms defined within our farm. Now, we're fine to stop here with the locations and just track everything at the room level, but Kinoko gives you the option to get much more precise with your location tracking. Within each room, you can define racks, shelves, and even individual slots on a shelf. The question of how deep you should go with your location tracking is one that unfortunately just doesn't have a one-size-fits-all answer. Obviously, it's better to have more precise data, but the more locations you have, the more overhead it's going to add to your workflow. So more locations is going to mean more scanning you're going to have to do as you move blocks around your farm. How precise you want to get is something every farm will just have to decide for themselves. But personally, I think the rack level is a good place to start, as that gives you a little more precision than just tracking rooms, but doesn't add too much additional scanning to your workflow. There are a couple of different ways to edit locations within your rooms. The first is from the farm editing panel that we saw earlier. But we can also do this by clicking this three-dot menu here next to a specific room and selecting Edit. And now we have a similar view, but it's just in the context of that one room. But since we're doing multiple rooms right now, I'm going to go back to this farm panel. And now you'll notice that the pasteurization and inoculation rooms are grayed out. We cannot add any locations to those. That's because in our research and development for Kinoko, we found that it's really in the colonization, fruiting, and storage rooms where that kind of granular data collection really matters. And so we just went ahead and left that out for pasteurization and inoculation rooms because we didn't foresee it being something that people would use. I'll also mention right now, if you want to change the name of a room, you can actually do that in line here from this view. You just click here on the name and it will become editable and you can rename it whatever you want. So I'm going to go ahead and add, I'll go ahead and add 2 racks to each of these rooms. And now if I wanted to, I could keep going. I could click the plus sign on a rack and add shelves or slots, and I could keep going with the shelves and add slots to the shelves themselves. But for now, I'm just going to keep it at the rack level. And I'm going to save changes. And you'll notice now over here in our farm navigator, all of our new racks are now defined within our rooms. Now that we have locations set up for our farm, the next step is to generate some labels that we can print and then stick on each of these physical locations in the farm. We can do that by clicking the QR code icon here on the nav menu on the left of the screen. The first step here is to choose a label template. We have a list of predefined templates for Avery labels. We will likely be adding additional templates for other manufacturers in the future, but for now, if you want to go with something different, you also have the option of creating a custom template. I'm just going to choose one of these Avery templates here, and then I'll click Start. In this pop-up window, you'll see that we have 4 different types of labels that we could choose from. Right now, we're doing location labels, but we'll also come back here and look at block labels. And although it's outside of the scope of the Quick Start guide, you also have the option to make labels for the trays in your storage room, as well as just simple text labels for species and varieties to label the specific type of mushroom on your block. But we're doing location. I'm going to go ahead and select all of my locations. This is a multi-select, so you can just keep selecting as many as you want. I'm just going to make one label for each of these locations. And then in this field, I could, if I wanted to, enter any additional text that I would like to show on the label, but I am just going to leave that blank for now. And once we have all this information set up, if we go ahead and click Add Labels, that's going to populate this table down here with each of the labels that will be on our sheet. So once we like what we see, we can click Apply, and that will take us to this step. This is the label editor, where we have a lot of flexibility in laying out how we want our labels to print. For example, if I want to move things around, I have arrows here. I can insert a blank after. I can insert a blank before. I can remove a label. I can erase. I can undo and redo. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and undo what I just did. We also have those options over here as well. Down here is where I can navigate if there are multiple pages, which we do have multiple pages in this case. If we need to edit anything, we can click there to bring the pop-up window back up. And I'm actually good with this, so I'm going to go ahead and click here to preview and print. So this shows us a preview of exactly what's going to be sent to the printer. You can click this button to print directly. You can also click down here to just download a PDF, which is what I'm going to go ahead and do. Now that we have all of our locations set up and labeled, we can go ahead and create our first batch so that we can get some blocks into those locations. However, before we can create a batch, we need to make sure we have a substrate. To create a substrate, we're going to go over here and look at the inventory tab from the sidebar. You'll see we have multiple options for managing the inventory of different supplies, and what we're worried about right now is substrates. I'll click on substrates. That'll bring up this page, and up here in the corner is the button to create a new substrate. So this is, I'll just say sawdust. You have the option, if you want to add ingredients if you have multiple different substrate mixes and you want to keep track of that. For now, I'm just going to leave it at sawdust, and I'm going to click Save Changes. And now here I have my substrate. I'm now going to go back to my dashboard and select my farm. And now you'll see here I now have one active substrate. And if I click here to start a new batch, it will automatically generate a name for the batch. It'll just have the date and then a number. I'm just going to leave it like that. Here is where we can enter the estimated number of blocks that we think we're going to have in this batch. I'm going to go ahead and say 100. Here's where we can select our substrate. You can see the one we just made is here in the list. For the default bag weight, I'm going to enter 10 pounds. And then I'll click Create to save changes. So you can see here that our new batch is now showing on the dashboard. We have an alert here because it has not yet been pasteurized. Each of these little squares here corresponds to the estimated blocks, and as we actually scan with the mobile app, or if we're using the website, when we create blocks, it will actually show here and fill in these squares. So I'm going to go ahead and record the pasteurization for this batch. Here in this pop-up window, we can enter any information we want to record about the pasteurization of this batch. These are all completely optional. I'm just going to leave these blank, but you have the option to record this data if you want to. And then you want to make sure this box is checked, confirming the pasteurization, and then we'll click Pasteurize. And so now this batch has its pasteurization confirmed. We could go back and update that information by clicking there if we wanted to. We also have the option to print labels, which we will come back to later. This icon up here will hide this batch. We put that there just to keep the interface clean so we don't have a bunch of old batches showing up in the interface. You can just kind of keep it decluttered if you want. Now that we have a batch, it's time to go ahead and start tracking our blocks. Right now, we just have a bunch of blocks of substrate that have been pasteurized and are ready to be inoculated. Before we can do that, we have to create a spawn so that we can record the details of the inoculation. Creating a spawn is very similar to what we did when we created a substrate. We're going to go back over here to the inventory tab and select spawn. And we see a similar type of page. And once again, the button to create a new one is up here in the corner. So the first thing we want to do is select the mushroom variety. We have a few to choose from here. I'm going to say button mushroom. We can optionally add a supplier if that's something we want to keep track of, and we can also optionally add a strain, a container type, a substrate, or a lot number. I'm going to leave all that blank for now and save my changes. Now that we have a spawn, we can move ahead to the inoculation step. The first thing we need to do is go back to the label printer and make some labels to stick on our blocks, just like we did for locations. It's important to note that printing location labels is just a one-time thing. You do it once, and then once that location is labeled, you can just reuse that same label. But when it comes to blocks, you're going to need to print new labels for every batch. Okay, now that we have a batch and we have a spawn, we can go ahead and print some labels to put on our blocks so that we can start scanning them into the system. So I'm going to click on this QR code icon again to open the label generator. We are again going to select a template from the list and hit start. This time in this pop-up, we're going to be doing block labels, so we want to make sure that block is selected. And since this is our first time, we're going to be doing new blocks. If we were just reprinting additional copies of labels that we already made, we would do existing blocks, but we're doing new. And then we're going to choose the batch that we just created. We had set the estimate for this batch at 100 blocks, so I'm going to make 100 labels. I don't need duplicates and I don't need any custom text. So again, I will click Add Labels, and we can see we have a table here with all 100 of those labels. And we can click Apply. And just like when we did location labels, we're going to go ahead and preview and print, and I'm just going to download this PDF file. Okay, now that we have our block labels, it's time to start scanning blocks into the system. Pretend I'm in an inoculation lab and I've got all my uninoculated blocks here from the pasteurization step. As I inoculate each of these blocks, I'll take one of my block labels and stick it on the block, then scan it with the mobile app to record the inoculation. So first, we're going to hit the scan button and scan the block, and that will recognize it as an uninoculated block and automatically pull up this screen where we can select the room and substrate, and we now have an inoculated block. And over here on the dashboard, I'll go ahead and scan another block, and you can see it will update in real time. It will fill in that square as soon as I scan the other block. Now that we have some inoculated blocks, our next step will be to transfer these blocks to a colonization room. We can do that with the mobile app in two different ways, either by transferring a single block individually, or we can transfer multiple blocks at once. So to transfer a single block, first we would scan a block like in the previous step and then select the transfer option. And then we're going to scan the location we're transferring to and confirm. And now if we go back to the dashboard, we can see that block is now in the location we selected. Okay, now to transfer multiple blocks, we'll start by scanning a location. We'll select transfer blocks, and then you can scan as many blocks as you want, and it will pick all of those up. And then we confirm the transfer. Now that we have our blocks moved to an inoculation room, once they're ready for fruiting, we can repeat this same process to transfer them to a fruiting room. Then the last step would be harvesting. You can get more advanced with your harvest workflow by setting up trays and tracking the location of trays within your storage rooms as well, but for the purposes of this quick start guide, I'll just be showing you the basic way to record a harvest from a block. So we'll start by selecting the harvest button here in the corner, and then we can scan one or multiple blocks. We can select the weight that we're harvesting, and then we can save. We've been through the full process now, from setting up locations, creating a batch, pasteurizing a substrate, inoculating blocks, transferring them from room to room, and even recording a harvest. You've seen how this data gets displayed in various places on the dashboard, but I want to end by just showing you a little bit of our reporting module. This is where you can go to dive deeper into your data and really get to see the benefits of all the data collection you've been doing. That does it for the Kinoko Quick Start Guide. If you go back to the documentation site I mentioned earlier in the video, you'll see that in addition to the Quick Start, we also have another module called Learn. This module takes a deep dive into all the features of Kinoko, including features we haven't touched on at all in this video. Things like more advanced harvesting, observations and inspections, scheduling, and a whole lot more. Now that you've been through this Quick Start and gotten familiar with the core workflow, I encourage you to go check out that Learn module and explore all the other powerful features Kinoko has to offer. That link will, of course, be in the description below. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions, or if you need any further assistance, or if you just want to give some feedback, we would really love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and happy harvesting.